There we are. Good morning, everybody. We are live. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Another week of amazing food safety, food quality, all the stuff that we love to eat and drink like kefir. And nobody out there is going to say thanks because they just expect it of us. But guess what? Alan and I, we're going to say thank you. Good job. We really appreciate all that you do. So if you're new, pull up a chair. This is the Food Safety Chat Live, and every Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, we live stream, and I get to bring an amazing guest on the show to talk with you about all things food safety. And what you're going to notice, not a lecture. This is meant to impart information and hopefully share a little bit of what we've learned over the years to make your life a little bit easier. And one of the things, Alan, that I love here in the chat is just the absolute community that we've built here and the back and forth and the expertise that joins us every single week to participate in the chat is just awesome. So, of course, my name is Brian Armentrout, and I'm with the Food Leadership Group based in lovely Loveland, Colorado, where we are in the throes of summer, where it's been 95 or 100 degrees pretty much here every day, Alan. So, of course, if you're familiar with the chat, we're being joined by expert extraordinaire Alan Saylor, who is the managing partner with Center for Food Safety and Regulatory Services. How's your day going, Alan?
It's going great, going great. I'm always concerned when I hear the word expert associated with myself or anybody, because we're continuing to learn, and that's what this what I like about this chat, Brian.
Well, and really, that's the mark of an expert, right? Is part of being an expert is realizing how much you don't know. Right. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect, with the people who think that they know. Those are the dangerous ones that you got to watch out for. And how's your weather back in Virginia?
I think you described it very well. We've had the hottest July on record. I think we had 4 straight weeks of 90 or higher. I don't think it ever got below that. And August has cooled surprisingly, slightly. We've got some rain, but yeah, we're hitting 90s pretty consistently.
And so Tim's in Tennessee, so he's in the Nashville area. I saw last week or earlier this week quite a bit of flooding in the Tennessee area. And I know they were getting that in the Carolinas as well.
And we've got a possible hurricane that's deciding where it wants to do landfall.
Always fun. Kira, good morning from rainy Seattle. You're up bright and early, Kira. Thanks for joining us. So with that, one of the things here, Alan, that we've done, of course, here with the chat is everybody join us for a drink of your favorite beverage. I got some nice coffee. You have your kefir, correct?
I've got my kefir.
Awesome. Cheers, everyone. Such a healthy guy. So one of the things that we love to do here on the chat is I love to torture our guests, Alan, and our participants. And I know Tim is ready for this. The dad joke. Are you ready for the dad joke, Alan?
Of course.
So I found one that was kind of topical here for this time of year. You know, a lot of people they're sending their children off to college and university and all of that whole process. So as part of that, Alan, what did the buffalo say to his son before he left for college?
Don't come back? I don't know.
No, he said, bye, son.
Oh, boy. Not bad.
Steve, good morning. Jose's here. Always good then when Jose is here. Good to see our friend Jose. So I just love it when I have you on the chat, Alan, because you always have such insightful information to share. And Alan's one of the leading experts in the food industry, and he's very modest, but goes back through my entire career. I mean, Alan was one of those first premier experts within the dairy field that I learned about and got to know, and we became friends over the years. And I just constantly learn new stuff from Alan. And that's kind of the whole philosophy here associated with the chat. If you learn one new thing, and the and part is the important part, you learn to apply what you have learned in this chat and you bring your performance up just a little bit. That's how things get better. All growth is incremental. It's not step change, it's incremental, isn't it?
Very much so. Very much so. And, sometimes your clients teach you things that you never even thought about when it comes to food safety. What is responsibility? whether you are a consultant like I am, or whether you have direct responsibilities in a facility or at the corporate level. This realm that we live in, food safety, food regulatory compliance, is multidimensional. And occasionally we discover a dimension we didn't even think about.
Yeah, and that's key, right? And so part of this is the main thing that I think we learn in food safety over the years is it's not necessarily things that you know about that get you. It's the things you don't know about that sneak up on you. It's you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of times we live in blissful ignorance in these areas, and all of a sudden something hits us upside the head, and we become aware of it. For decades, Alan, peanut butter. Peanut butter. What can you do to peanut butter? That's about as safe a product as you can get. Just put it on your shelf, and it's good forever. No, right? Now then we had PCA, of which I saw Parnell was in the news again, trying to get out of his prison sentence again.
Yep.
Well, that saga just continues. That guy evidently has bottomless pockets for money to try and do that, but we'll see on that side. But anyway, Parnell was the CEO of PCA, the Peanut Corporation of America, of course, for people who don't know. It's the big salmonella issue that killed, 7 people or something crazy when that whole issue happened.
Yeah. And, when you look at it, we've seen, and I've been around long enough to see this swing between the food safety hazards, the physical, biological, chemical, and we spent a lot of time, we're always going to spend a lot of time on the biological. And I suspect that many, if not all of the people that are joining us today have a pretty good schooling in the biological hazards and what their products and their facilities and their processes might be subjected to or have a tendency. But right now, the swing is back toward chemical. And it's not that biological is going away. In fact, if you looked at the FDA news for the week, you will find mostly biological, but it is also chemical. And so I want to make sure that we don't forget about the chemical and physical hazards. And one of the areas where we probably do not spend enough time is in our water source. And why would we waste time doing that? Because we don't have time to get everything done we are supposed to do anyway. So we get water from a city. City's responsible for giving us safe water. So let's move on to other things.
Yeah. And if you're going through a GFSI audit, that's an easy thing to check off your list. The auditor comes in and says, oh, well, have you checked your water quality? Yes, here's my report from the city that they annually send to me. As per the standard, I also take some samples at points of use once a year, and I'm good. I don't have to worry about anything.
Until you do.
Until you do. And that's, part of this is, kind of at the higher level, looking at this is part of what we need to do in food safety is figure out what's real and what's not. Part of what we're evaluating is kind of, a little bit of an offshoot on this conversation, and we'll dive into water, is microplastics, right? Booga, 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 right? It's just like, okay, is it really a problem? Is it not a problem? I have friends and I see people who are like, they get rid of everything plastic in their house and they've got glass containers and that's all that they're going to use from now on because of microplastics. Maybe a problem. And that's part of, I think, reasonably likely to occur is something that we need to always be thinking about within food safety. And so for me, kind of the jury's out on this whole microplastic thing. I don't have enough evidence yet to decide if it's really a risk to health or not.
Well, I think you can use that. You can use PFAS, which has really hit many food sectors pretty hard, dairy certainly. What is a toxicity? It seems that there is some, but perception is reality, which I'm being a bit old school about. So when you talk about microplastics, what's the toxicity? We know it is prevalent. It is ubiquitous almost. What is its toxicity? What is it doing to the health of the average American or food consumer? PFAS, what is that doing? We don't really know, but the consumers, whether they have factual basis or not, have made a decision. And that decision is what we have to go on. And those are chemicals. And how are those chemicals transmitted? Most of them Most of these two, at least, are water.
Mhm.
Not entirely,
Yeah.
but water is one of the places where you find presence, if you test for it, both of these items.
hmm And this goes back to, I mean, yeah, so I mean, remember all the scares around BPA. Okay, fine. And then we all had to write letters around this and give those to our customers. Um, to your point, what's the linkage? Show me the evidence that this is actually a threat to human health. Does it exist? I don't know, right? And part of that is working through these things. Non-GMO. Okay, how many people have died from GMO? Zero, right? Is that really a health threat? And so part of this, right, to your point, Alan, and I want to emphasize this for everybody because it's important, is there's the scientific realm and then there's the marketing realm. And so sometimes in food safety, you have to navigate the marketing realm. Bovine growth hormone, right? Every dairy product, I'm sure if you pick up that bottle of kefir, there's a little thing on there that says, no no growth hormone added to this product. Well, guess what? It's also naturally occurring in that milk as well. And so they got their nice little disclaimer statements, and then that kind of popped up, and then it kind of went away.
Yeah, and the presumption is it's just not there. But couldn't marketing do a great job if they said something about the fact that we treat our water, we filter our water, we use ozone, we use charcoal filters, we use UV light. No.
Yeah.
How do you market that? So the difficulty is it's not a marketable advantage. We use it and our competitors don't use it. Well, maybe it should be. Maybe it could be. I'd like to delve into that a little bit more, not so much from marketing, because I'm not a marketer, but are we in the food industry really giving the credence to water that we should? After all, it is an ingredient in many foods. Even if it is an ingredient, it is the fundamental fluid we use for cleaning our facilities.
Yeah.
So how important is water?
Exactly. And this goes back to, our theme around today, which was, hazards you're ignoring or not really thinking about, and water is one of those. And there's a reason why with the whole rulings around FSMA, they have your prerequisites and your preventive controls. Supplier control, right? FDA has said, wow, super important. This is a preventive control. Guess what? Your local water municipality is your supplier. They're supplying you with water. And as we often say in the food industry for food safety, trust but verify. What do you really know? And so part of this is when Alan and I were preparing here earlier this week, it's like, okay, well, let's take a look at water and look at it from that supplier lens. So part of what I pulled up here, Alan, then is, okay, well, let's establish a baseline around risk. How risky is water? And in the database for the chat, I'm going to include the documents here that I have that were showing up here as well. So you'll have access to these if you have the database. So here's a list, Alan, of the municipal water contamination within the last 10 years. And a quick plug here for Grok. So Grok is the search engine, the AI tool that you can use within X. And fantastic. This tool is making my so much easier trying to find this information. As we all know, trying to dig this up and doing searches, very, very difficult. All I had to do was ask a couple of well-positioned questions within Grok, and I got this information that we're looking at here. So here's some examples within the last 10 years of municipal water. Now, keep in mind that all these people on this list all trusted their local authorities to provide safe, high-quality water. And these are all failures of these government entities to do this. So, of course, first on the list here, Alan, Flint, Michigan. They are still going through issues in Flint, Michigan, aren't they?
Very much so. Very much so. And I'd like to say, too, put a plug in for the EPA search database. If you go into the safe water drinking section of EPA, you can do searches. And whether you get this or something less than this or something more than this, I couldn't tell you. I go in there. I'm involved in a case now where I've had to go in there twice in the last week and was a little bit shocked. You can actually get by state. You can filter by a couple of other things, and I'm sure Grok can do that as well. But the bottom line is, and somebody told me this 10 years ago, one of my old FDA colleagues said, at any given moment in time, 2% of the U.S. municipal water supplies are out of compliance with the EPA Safe Water Drinking Act.
Wow.
2%. Now, I don't have any facts to base that. I don't know if he had any, but I think that is a good rule of thumb to base as you're looking for capital improvements in your facility. We're thinking of lots of things, proficiency, improving efficiency, getting rid of old equipment that seems to be breaking down and repairing. Those are naturals. Very few people think about investing in improving the water system to protect yourself from a municipality. The other thing I love is that when there is, and I've had direct experience with this, when there is a problem, the municipality has a system to immediately notify every user that there's a problem. No, they don't. I don't think there's any of them. And in fact, they sometimes purposely do not notify, hoping that it will just go away because it is a short-term incident and it's an embarrassment.
Yeah.
So,
and this goes back to a point I always like to talk about as well. And so thanks for bringing that up, is that never forget that these are governmental agencies, right? They don't necessarily have an incentive to notify you, right? Just from a human being standpoint, who wants to raise your hand and say, hey, I screwed up? No, nobody wants to do that. And they have no incentive to do so. So that means that you need to step up your efforts in order to test for these things and make sure that things are going well. There's a lot of things that you need to look out here for. So we've got on this list, anywhere, let's say, for example, that you're in a facility that's in an area of the country which has older infrastructure, as we see here in Flint, and you see this several times here on the list, Newark, New Jersey. What other locations do we have on here that potentially have this issue? So in particular, I'm looking at here, so we got arsenic and fluoride, lead, East Chicago, Benton Harbor, Michigan. If you're in any area, Pittsburgh, Detroit, if you're in an area where maybe the infrastructure is not being kept up very well, because number one, replacing water mains, oh my goodness, that's expensive, extremely expensive. Now they're coming up with new technologies. Have you seen some of these systems where they can now put bladders inside the pipes that will self-seal and prevent this lead from leaching into the water? But if you're in an area where they can't do this or they haven't done this, and you have lead pipes, as a food manufacturer, you need to know about that.
Absolutely. And what? Okay, so you are in one of these facilities. What do you do about it? Well, maybe we just pretend because, I couldn't quite read what Brian had put up there, so therefore I'm happy because I'm ignorant. And the idea is ignorance never is acceptable when it comes to food safety and certainly water safety. So I like what you said, Brian, about this being a supplier. We do not think of the water municipality as a supplier. We will certainly go to great lengths. In fact, some large companies will send their own staff, and they have dedicated staff to go to all their suppliers at least once a year. They'll send questionnaires out once a year. What do we do with our municipality? Have you ever gone to the treatment facility? Do you have a sense of how the water tower works or the water storage tanks? Do you have any sense of the quality of we'll call it raw water coming out of the wells or the surface before they're treated? And what are they treating? How are they treating? How many chemicals are they using? And what is the reliability? We ran out. The truck didn't come this week. So therefore, we just didn't treat to adjust for pH, which means if we didn't adjust for pH and we have lead pipes, guess what we do? We start extracting lead at pretty high levels until we can get that chemical back in the stock and we get our pHs controlled.
Yeah. Well, and establishing that relationship with your suppliers is very important because there's somebody who's running that water treatment facility. You need to get to know that person. And even if you can set up an informal arrangement with them to say, hey, listen, I would really appreciate, let's say you take them out to lunch and say, I would really appreciate it if something's going on there that you give me a heads up. Because guess what? If you're a food manufacturer in a rural location, you're probably one of the bigger employers in that area. it's important that they keep you happy, right? You've got a little bit of political clout in that area. And if they can give you an informal phone call and say, hey, heads up, we're seeing an issue here. You might want to increase your water treatment. Huge, right? That could potentially save you from a big issue. There was an issue in my past, and I've mentioned it, Alan, on this chat here before. At one of my plants in El Paso, Texas, the local municipal water supply, and with the product we were manufacturing there, it was the main ingredient in the product. And they had a microbial contamination event in their systems. And so they decided to do a massive chlorine flush to kill everything.
Sure.
They didn't tell anyone. And so now this highly chlorinated water came into my plant and we didn't know about it. And I put procedures in place after the fact. Shame on me. I should have been thinking about this. Put procedures in place later on to correct for this, but we didn't know about this. This highly chlorinated water then interacted with the product and gave it an off flavor. Oh, yeah. And we were producing an ingredient for other manufacturers. So now this multiplied, right? So everything that this got added to now impacted the finished product. And we started seeing complaints from our customers coming back and saying, hey, we got a weird taste here in the product. Massive problem. So we instituted daily water tasting in that facility. So it's part of the morning routine at plant startup. We would take a sample of water at the point of use, bring it to the lab, and that technician would then taste that water to make sure it was okay. Now, was this a full-blown sensory process? No. We didn't need to be. We needed to make sure that they understood what off tasted like. Okay, here's what the water should taste like. All right, now here's water that's salty. All right, you can taste that. Okay, great. Here's water where we've changed the pH a little bit and it's a little higher, a little low. Can you notice that bitterness associated with that, or that citric acid tanginess that we've introduced into that water? If you taste something that is abnormal, you need to immediately let the plant manager know, and we're not going to start the plant.
Yep. Wait a minute. This is water, Brian. I think you're getting too serious. How bad can it get? Well, I think you just described how bad, and I won't ask what the financial impact was on your company, but I think it was probably substantial. And it was caused simply by water and by somebody doing the right thing, superchlorinating. That's what you do when you have microbial contamination, and letting nobody know. So what does the FSMA, Preventive Controls for Human Food, say about supplier management? It says that you have to determine what the likely hazards, reasonably likely hazards might be, and then who controls them. Does your supplier control them? Do you control them, or does the customer control them? In this case, you have two options. Either you rely on the municipality to control them, and if you're relying on that, what does it say? You have to have a full supplier management program. I have never been refused access to a water treatment plant if I've explained the reason why I'm going there. And of course, there may be some rules of the road, so to speak, but you need to understand how they treat their water. And yet, wait a minute, Alan, I'm a food safety specialist. I'm not a water specialist. Well, I'll tell you what, you should consider getting a water certificate from the state, because it will require you to take training, and it will help you understand. And believe it or not, you know what they do? They filter. We filter. They use membranes. We use membranes many times if it's a liquid product. They use valves. They use things that are similar. They use them in sometimes slightly different ways, but not all that much. They use flow meters. And so it is really important to up your skill set to become knowledgeable about water. In other words, I always say that if you have a supplier, you need to know as much about how they make their ingredient that they supply to you as they do.
Yeah.
And it's
absolutely. And part of this too is who doesn't love to talk about what they do, right? Hey, I would love to come to your water facility and learn about what you do. Right? Nobody does that. That manager at that facility is going to be more than happy to show you what's going on there. Now, if they don't, that's also a red flag, right? And so part of what we were talking about here too is on this list, Alan, there's things like this that you need to be aware of. this one caught my attention here, where it said that they didn't get their stuff done in time. So where did that one go here on this list? There was somebody saying that here it is. So delayed installation at the treatment plant to kill parasites, testing failures for chemicals in 2017 in Tacoma, Washington. So they have a budget from the city. The money didn't come through. They didn't get it put in time. Why is cryptosporidium such a giant risk? Cryptosporidium is very difficult to kill. It's a parasite and it produces oocysts, which then once they're in this kind of this delayed statement, where they're like a spore, and chlorine won't even kill them. When you have outbreaks in public pools where you've had an accident with a small child who's in the water, the chlorine's not going to help, which is why they shut down that pool and they have to completely clean and sanitize the whole system. Guess what? In your plant, you need to have, and you were talking about this earlier, and we'll go into more of this too, of what you should have in your plant. This is why you need filtration systems that also then filter out some of those pre-contaminants. It's why you have on your air filtration in your plants, you have pre-filters and then you've got your HEPA filters. Those pre-filters that are there to take care of the big stuff. Well, these oocysts and the cryptosporidium are pretty good size. A lot of times a sand filtration system or diatomaceous earth are going to remove these things from the process.
I agree. And so how much is enough? I mean, okay, so now you've convinced me, Brian, that I should be doing something, and I'm trying to formulate an idea, talking to my plant manager so he or she can put it on the plant budget for next year. What are we talking about? Let's say I really don't have anything. We haven't had a problem. It's hard for me to justify to the plant manager, let alone the plant manager going corporate, to install filters and UV light systems. And, how much is enough? How do I know?
Well, and those systems are expensive, right? They're very expensive. But this is why you need to understand, and something that we talk about here on the chat quite a bit, Alan, is the technical skills are great, but you need to have the ability as well to persuade and show people why these things need to be looked at. And part of that is what we're looking at right now. It's never had a problem before. Well, guess what? Everybody on this list never had a problem before either. This is no different from any other supplier, and you're looking at it, from a food safety plan standpoint, severity and likelihood. And you need to build out that case to show why this is something that needs to be controlled. You need to communicate this to FDA when they come into the plant. The plant manager needs to understand this as well. And I love your suggestion. So as I talked about at the beginning of the chat, if you learn one new thing, the certification, brilliant, right? Go and learn about water. A lot of times quality professionals, so for example, in the dairy industry, will go to classes on aseptic processing and they'll go to better process school. Are they actually making the product? No, but they need to understand the process so that they can effectively manage it. Same thing here. Another area of risk here as well that people don't really think about is I also added on this list, Alan, the second area of risk, cybersecurity. Our water systems are very vulnerable to outside risks. And within here, I did the same search for potential cybersecurity risks within the water supply. And reading through this list, it's scary. And I remember this one here that happened in 2021, where a hacker got into the water system because they were using poor password control. And they were able to modify the amount of treatment, right? So they increased the sodium hydroxide going into the system from 100 parts per million to 11,100 parts per million. And luckily, the technician was paying attention and noticed the problem and fixed it right away. What type of systems do they have in place there to safeguard the water, to make sure that people from the outside aren't getting into the system and doing bad things?
It was interesting that Monday I was in a water treatment plant, and it was not to prepare, but it was part of the client's request. And this was very modern. It almost ran itself because it had sensors all over the place, sensors that were converting data to milliamp signals that went to a software program and a central computer. And then there were ranges and there were targets. And if these targets or ranges were not hit, then guess what? There was messages sent to the operators, because this facility was usually empty of people.
Mhm.
And so the thing I never ask, and I should have based on what you just said, is what is the security to prevent somebody from doing what you just said?
Yeah.
Do I know if they had any? No, I don't. And I think that is so important. And that's a question as we're looking at water and the municipality as a supplier. How safe can it be? And we've talked about the normal kinds of safety, but not cyber safety. And that's
Yeah.
an excellent idea.
I know people who work in this space who work with municipalities on purpose in this area because they know how weak this can be, and they're very scared by this because it is, if you have these sophisticated automated systems, fantastic, but there's a postie on the computer that says the password is 1234556. It's all for naught.
Yep. And what is interesting is with the advent of AI, I suspect the ability to hack has just got exponentially easier. I'm not a hacker, but I suspect with AI and some of the tools that are now available, we probably have a easier pathway to do things like that.
Mhm.
Am I going to try it? Of course not. Should you try it as a part of testing your supplier? I would suggest not, because it might be a federal offense. But I think asking the question and getting some answers from your municipality would be very wise.
Yes. And again, this is a conversation that you need to do in person. This is highly confidential information. We're talking about threats to our supply chain within our food industry, incredibly sensitive for our country. And that's a conversation you have with the manager of that municipal water supply over an audit or lunch with them, so you get to know them, and you can ask them informally because you don't want that in writing. So you need to think about these things. So we've been talking, Alan, a lot about water as ingredient. I think everybody's like, yep, got it. That's definitely an ingredient I need to take a look at. I don't use a municipal water supply, Alan. I use a well. We have our own wells at our facility, so I'm okay. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that the issue is that when you look at the various states and their reports of groundwater, you're finding more or an increased frequency of groundwater with some type of chemical contamination. And many times groundwater, whether it's deep or shallow wells, will also bring sediment in. Okay. So what are you doing? Because if you're making a product, so what if it's a little gritty? Sand is safe. You can consume sand all the time, and it probably, from a health standpoint, isn't an issue. From a product quality standpoint, you're probably going to start losing customers. So it in some ways, you have more control, but you have the same responsibility. Now you are your own supplier. You should subject yourself to the same issues. I'd also like to address one other thing that we kind of left hanging and get your thoughts and maybe hear from others. And I don't know if we've had any feedback yet, is how much is enough?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've been working with a company that has a municipal supply where the municipality put in a very advanced water treatment system, say in the last 5 to 8 years. Very impressive. Yet this facility has 3 tiers. They filter the incoming water. Now, I think they should put UV light on it, but they don't. Then at the CIP system, they don't use water as an ingredient. Now, this would change if they did, but they don't. But then they refilter it at the CIP. So all the water going into CIP is refiltered. And then at the host stations and a couple of other key places, they actually have end-use filters in clear acrylic tubes that show when the filters start building up with whatever it may be. Usually it's sediment. Obviously, it's chemical. You're not going to see it. Okay, well, what about chemical? Well, carbon filters are great unless you have high levels of organic in the incoming water. Do you know that? Why is high levels of organic a problem? It just adds to the nutrition of my food. What difference does it make? The problem is chlorine and high levels of organic create carcinogenic compounds. And one of the few ways you can pull these out is through carbon filters. So how much is enough? That's totally dependent upon what is coming in. And where do you get that data? The city has to do yearly tests. They have to do monthly tests. And my suggestion is you do your own tests of what's coming in to try and make a decision about how much is enough.
Right. And that's a good point, is that the municipal is doing the minimum amount of testing that the law or the regulation in that area requires them to do. And that's it. And you need to be thinking about this from the standpoint of your product in your context. So if you're back to our well example and you're pulling out well water, it's going to vary. The quality of that's going to vary throughout the year. So in the spring, when you have a lot of snow melting and there's a lot of runoff and that's seeping down through the soil into the underground aquifers and things like that, is that impacting the quality of that water? If your facility is located in the area with a lot of agriculture and the local farmers are adding pesticides and herbicides and other things to help their crops grow, is that getting into the water supply? And is that something you need to be worried about? It's all going to be the context around these things. Remember a while back, radiological, right? Everybody was worried about radiological threats within your water supply and testing for that. And everybody's like, radiological. I have a real life example of that. If you live in the mountains in Colorado, you have a well at your house. I have friends who had a well at their home and they found out that they had uranium in their water, naturally occurring uranium from the groundwater. They had to install special filters at their house to remove the uranium from the water. Now they have filters that are concentrating radioactive uranium. Once you change out your filters, Alan, how do you get rid of those? It was a completely unforeseen headache that they had to deal with.
Well, maybe if we just ignore it, it isn't there, right? It doesn't work very well, does it? Ignorance is the one thing that never saves you from anything, whether it's a food safety specialist or you just manage your own health or family. Ignorance is not the answer. And that's very impressive.
Yeah. If you work in food safety, saying, I didn't think about that is not a very good answer, right? We're paid to be thinking about this stuff.
Yes, we are.
So part of this as well is you're looking at your water source incoming, you're looking at it for ingredient. One of the things, and when you work with a sanitation company, and we have some very good people who join us on the chat in that field, one of the things a good rep for a sanitation company is going to ask you as they're getting ready to sell you the chemicals is, I want a water sample. I want to look at your water profile so that I can understand what chemicals are going to work best for you. Well, why, right? That should be a conversation with them. They may need to add chelating agents to that water because you've got so many particulates in hard water that are impacting the ability of your chemicals in your sanitation program to clean effectively.
I agree. And, stainless steel doesn't have to be shiny. It can be coated with all kinds of water minerals that after a certain point, you will never, ever get off. Yeah. And they will definitely have an impact on the product, maybe the flavor, maybe the flow rate. There are so many things. So it isn't a matter of let's wait and see what happens. Sometimes the tipping point is going to occur before you react, and we never want to get to that point. The other factor I'd like to throw into the mix here, Brian, I'd like to hear you or others, is water is becoming more difficult to obtain. As you said, some of these food plants are located in rural areas where the city, most of the water that the city can provide is provided to the food plant. Okay.
Right.
And as a food plant, let's say they're successful and they want to double in size. The water capacity isn't there. So what do? We look for ways to save, but we also look for ways to capture, retreat, and reuse. And what do we tend to do when we do that? And by the way, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. We should actually be doing more of that in the food industry. Yeah. We tend to concentrate some of our problems. We concentrate some of the issues that started at the city municipal water plant. And so this is another reason why you can say, well, the reuse and retreatment of water is not my problem. The problem is it's what comes in. The old adage in the dairy industry is you got poor quality milk, you can't make good quality, you can't somehow change it and make a good quality product. It's the same with water. If you have poor quality water and then you want to capture, treat, and reuse, can you improve it? The answer is yes. Can you improve it beyond where it was? Probably not.
Right. Well, and that's a good point, because within the dairy industries we are very well aware of, they have what's called cow water. And it's great that plants do this. They're like, okay, when you make cheese, you got a lot of whey and other things that are left over. It's about a 10-to-1 ratio of milk to cheese. So now you've got 9 out of 10 that are not cheese. Most of that is water. So smart plants said, oh, great, we're going to put in an RO system. We're going to filter that down. We're going to recapture that water. We're going to use it for rinsing out trucks and doing other non-food grade type activities. To your point, if there's issues in that material, now you're using that in your plant. Filtration systems for water and other elements in here that we're talking about, RO, UF, other type water filtration systems. By the way, as a food safety person, you need to learn about filtration systems.
That's right.
Very important.
That's right.
They're concentrators, to your point, Alan. You have what's known as permeate and retentate. Permeate is what permeates the membrane. It goes through. Retentate is what's retained on the outside of the membrane and can't get through. What are you concentrating on the outside of that membrane? Proteins, bacteria, and other things that can't make it through the pores. What is that doing within your systems, and how are you cleaning for these things? Because these membranes also are very, very sensitive and extremely expensive. So you need to make sure you're handling those appropriately in the plant.
I agree. And in water treatment plants, they're starting to use more and more RO, which means they are taking out the PFAS, hopefully, and they are taking out the microplastics, hopefully. Mm-hmm. They're operating properly. And yet these membranes, you said, are very complicated, very sensitive. When do they start fouling and not working? When do you get a penetration of a membrane? Do they understand, or was it just numbers that the engineers gave them and they really don't have any good sense of when they have failure modes happening in their membranes? And if they do, guess who gets it? You get it. And you may get it, as Brian said, in a concentrated. So membranes have really good impact on water quality and water safety. But if they are not properly used, they can actually make it a lot worse than the original water that was brought in from the wells or from the surface supply. So again, this is something where you need to check and ask questions about.
Yep. And so to your example earlier, a good municipal water source is going to have flow meters, and they're going to be tracking for those membranes usage. It's like, okay, this membrane is rated for 5 million gallon throughput before we have to change it. Well, with our earlier example, let's say that there was a large influx of people who've moved into that area, and now those filters are being used much more aggressively. And that municipal water supply didn't build that into their budget to have an extra change of those RO filters because they can't afford them. Well, we need to kind of sneak that through to the next budget period, and we'll let that kind of skate by. Ooh, that's not good.
No. And one of the remembrances I have is I was working and I wanted to find out something about the water system because I thought the water coming in was part of this plant's problem. So I called up and talked to the plant manager, and he said, this is not public information and we don't release anything to the public. Okay, well, maybe I just wasn't clear. So I went down and went to his office, talked to him. Mayor was there. He was there. Same story. You have no right to this information. Well, maybe I don't. I'm not a resident. I'm not consuming your product, but my client is. Would it be better if I asked the client to come down? They said, our answer is the same. We're not going to provide any information because it is from a security standpoint, that was their excuse. It is too sensitive and therefore we're not going to supply it. Found out a year later that both of them were criminally charged for not taking samples, falsifying information. And now, is that the case all the time? No, that's very rare. But if you get this kind of roadblock to information. I think much more, my experience on Monday when I was there is they told me everything, even things I didn't even ask about. They were so proud of what they were doing. There's nothing that they had to hide. That's the way that you will usually find a water treatment system in the people that operate it.
Well, and that's a perfect example of a good supplier. If you're going out and auditing your suppliers, how do they react to you? Are they combative? Are they defensive? Are they unwilling to share information? Or are they an open book? And those are things that are on the soft side of doing the supplier evaluation, of determining if they're a good partner with you or not. And if you have to deal with them, because guess what? If you have to have water, if you're using water in your plant, you have to have it. You can't say, no, I don't like you as a supplier. I'm going to go with another water supplier. No option. You have no option. So to your point earlier, Alan, what defensive measures do you need to take place in your plant then in order to mitigate any potential risk that you may have? And again, we're back to severity and likelihood. And providing that insurance policy to the plant to make sure that if these type of events happen, that they're not going to impact you.
That's right. I'm working on expert witness right now, and I can't say a whole lot about it. But what I can say is the amount of damages is around $5 million. And the whole contamination event revolves around municipal water. Now, is this unique? I'd love to say, but I'm actually working on 2 cases right now, both of which have water as one of the core problems. Yeah. So whether it's just odd or whether it's happening more, I don't know. But I think we as food safety professionals are obligated to do the due diligence about the water and really let the people in the water treatment plants be part of our team, or let us be part of their team. It doesn't matter. Let's be a team about these things. You know, in one case, if there had been some conversations and communications, these things would not have happened. But everybody was acting in their own little silo. And as a result, the communications didn't occur.
Yep. And that kind of reminds me now, let's see if I can pull this up here very quickly. There was a saying last week that I came up with that, and I probably heard this somewhere else, but I think this was very relevant, which was, let's see if I can pull it up here. I'm trying to do this on the fly, guys. Sorry. Let's remove this guy. And again, this will be in the notes. Is this saying right here why are you not pulling up? So let's see. No, I don't want to remove from studio. Anyway, the saying was this, which was part of the challenge that we have in quality is, and you alluded to this earlier indirectly, is all these things cost money. These water filtration systems cost money. We don't have that in our budget, right? The number one defense. And the saying I was thinking about on this is, with any type of company that's selling to the public, there's kind of 2 levels. And the purpose of marketing is to attract new customers. Hey, come buy our product. It's got this amazing product. And you're growing the business and you're bringing in money. And you can see that correlation. The purpose of quality is to keep those customers. So you may get them for one purchase and they buy your product and you say, oh, this isn't too bad. But if you're unable to maintain that level of quality and those expectations with those customers, no amount of marketing or sales are going to save that sale. You're going to lose those customers. Food companies survive when you have repeat business and word of mouth. So if you produce a good product and people love it, they're going to tell their friends, et cetera, et cetera. Water is key to that. So if you have inconsistent water with bad quality that imparts off flavors or problems, that's going to be something that drives those customers away. And you can use that information then to help sell, because that's what we're doing, the need for these water filtration systems in your plant.
Yep. Until, as the plant manager, I simply say, Brian, okay, let me see the last GSFI-based audit or third-party audit or the state audit or the FDA audit or the USDA audit. And let me see what they say about water. Not even what they wrote, but what is their criteria? And you know what? That's part of our problem right now, is there is an inadequate attention by all of these. I'm not saying that they aren't helpful, but do they give me enough information to be able to motivate management to invest the capital? And the answer is, it's checked, Alan. It is clear. It looks like they are satisfied. If they are satisfied, and we have to share this with our customers are going to be satisfied. So how do I justify putting more money into a problem that hasn't occurred in the past, and is probably not going to occur? At least as a plant manager, I'm just pretending that's might be the mindset. Yeah. And so how much influence? Some of you, I believe, sit on these boards that make decisions about SQF, and it's not called BRC anymore, FSSC 22000, and what the criteria is for evaluating NSF criteria. It is woefully adequate in looking at the safety of the water. I really think that there needs to be some major effort put into rewriting these audit systems to drive us to do what Brian and I have talked about in the last, well, it's getting to be almost an hour now. And how do we do that? You get involved. You don't wait until the 2 lawsuits that I'm involved with happened. It's too late by then. Now, are there a lot of lessons to be learned? Absolutely. Will the parties involved improve so it doesn't happen again? I am sure they will. But why did it have to happen at all?
Yep. And so the way I look at this is this, and this would be my response to you as the devil's advocate CEO or plant manager, would be, okay, granted, audits and regulatory activity, these are the baseline. These are the minimum of what we need to be doing. Would you like our company to be average and mediocre, or do you want us to be world-class and leading the pack and growing our business incrementally? Oh, which are they going to pick? If you want to be world-class, you have to put world-class systems in place. Those two things are married. They have to be put in place. And yeah, you just can't go crazy. We have to be able to justify and persuade appropriately. And a lot of the information we're sharing on the chat give you the tools to do that. But part of what we're talking about too is the data doesn't speak for itself. Just getting a copy of what I presented earlier with here's some of the issues over the last 10 years isn't persuasive. To your point, Alan, they're going to come back and say, a few random issues. That's probably not going to happen to us. Yeah, that's what all those companies said too.
Very true.
So what do we want to do to make our company the best it can be? And looking at these programs and these systems and saying, okay, we need a physical filtration. We need UV. We need RO. We need an in-house water capture system so that we have enough water all the time. Water is important. It's the fundamental for almost everything that we do and all the aspects that we've talked about today. You can't ignore these things.
And I think as a nice segue, if we are waiting for somebody to tell us to do the things you and I have talked about, it's just a matter of time till we're going to get in trouble. And certainly we used to always say, well, hey, the state inspector didn't say anything about it. FDA or USDA was in here. They didn't mention anything about it. Well, I can't speak much for the states. Some states have very robust programs. Others have less than robust programs. But I can certainly tell you that the USDA and FDA food safety programs are in a state of massive turmoil right now. And if we in the food industry are waiting for them to give us an indication, it's a path to failure. It's just a matter of when it will happen.
Yep, absolutely. And gathering this information and ammunition and that's kind of a big chunk of what we're talking about here is unrecognized threats and being proactive. And that's what we get paid to do in food safety.
Yeah. Just to share information that maybe our listeners already know about, but it's very recent, is that I used to work in a place called the South Building, the USDA, and the proposal by the Secretary of Agriculture is to, I don't know, there's probably 10,000 people working there, is to either eliminate or move them outside of Washington to regional offices, which means there'll be a huge turnover. FDA reorganized last fall before we had the current president elected. And guess what are the hot news stories right now? to reorganize and to move some of the food safety very likely to USDA. Now, there's bills in Congress right now to do that. There are stories, there are talks about that with our current presidential administration, where they're looking to downsize and increase the efficiency of government. Hold on to your hats, because don't wait for the government to set the standards for food safety to assure that your company will not get in trouble. For the next year or two, it's going to be absolute turmoil. Maybe chaos is a little strong, but it probably isn't. We are in a change environment right now, and we've got to take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. In food safety, you cannot delegate this responsibility. It's yours, right? You can't say not my problem. Oopsie doopsie, the local municipality did whatever incorrectly. It's not my fault. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. You need to be on top of these things. So we'll kind of bring this back up to the 30,000 foot level, and I think really kind of the turmoil that's going on in the regulatory side, because Alan has a fantastic background and insight into that. We'll talk about that on a future chat as well. We'll get more into detail on that, because that definitely impacts everything that we're talking about today. So kind of the steps you should be taking, and again, right, what we do in food safety, sometimes it takes longer than we want, but you got to chip away at it, and you have to influence and persuade and get to where you want to go. So here's the key points that I had coming out of this, Alan, is visit your local water municipality, take a tour, get to know them, how they do these things. What training do they have? What certifications do they have? What certifications and training can I take so I understand what is it that you do? What issues have they had in your local area within the 5 years? What are those things out there that you need to be aware of, that you need to be building out as reasonably likely to occur for your operations? What did they do to correct that issue? Did they just go, and then move on? Or did they actually investigate and find out what happened? What are your contingency programs? What is your control mechanisms in place in your operations at your plant level to make sure that you have that consistent, safe water that's coming in? And then once it's in your plant, how are you using it? How do you know that those systems are clean and effective? What is cleaning the cleaning systems that we talk about? And of course, we mentioned about this, but I want to make sure this is clear on that municipal side. And this counts for your plant too. Cybersecurity. How are these systems being protected? So, did I miss anything there, Alan, that you'd like to emphasize?
I think the only thing I would say is, how much is enough, and how do you determine when how much is enough? And I don't know there's a good answer to it. I think it needs to be on the checklist, and it is really going to be predicated upon what do you know about the water system? What did you know from your visit? What did you get from your interviews? What did you get from your sampling? What did you get from their sampling? And that will tell you how much is enough.
Right. So step one on this is, number one, we talk about this on the chat all the time, Alan, is don't hide this information. Don't keep this in your bubble. Bring this to your food safety team. If you're a quality manager in the plant, bring this to your food safety team and say, hey guys, I watched the food safety chat this week and they were talking about water supply and it's got me kind of worried. Let's do an evaluation of our water systems and see if we really have a threat here or not. That's why the food safety team is there. Right?
I agree.
Talk about it.
I agree. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity, Brian. This is a great subject, and I wish we had 10,000 people listening, because this is something that is not getting the kind of attention that it really needs. And I don't think there's the understanding in the food safety world that is necessary to do the things that you and I talked about or suggested.
Yep, absolutely. And so one of the things I wanted to bring up here as well, because you may have noticed this on LinkedIn or not, but one of the things that I do here, Alan, is all of these chats, and this is episode number 276. So I've been doing this now for almost 5 years. And all of this information for all of these chats, I've compiled into a database by subject and author. And you can take all this information, all of the attachments, everything, the videos, the transcripts, the MP3 files, everything that we talk about, and you have access to this. And I put together a special promo on this, and I'll put the link to the food safety chat database here in the description. Right now I'm running a promotion, 67% off, and this is lifetime access. As long as I'm doing this, you get all of this information. And for $100, right? You can get access to this. And the access code on this is Food Safety Chat 2025. I'll put that there in the comments as well. So at checkout, you put that in, you'll get the discount. I mean, normally it's over $300 for this system. And so I want to get this information out there and get more visibility in this for everybody to share this information. So yeah, as Lisa was saying here, these examples, absolutely, right? This is all in the database and you can use this as ammunition. And I have chats in there, Alan, from experts like Rod Wheeler, one of the preeminent experts in biosecurity. You can see then the overlap and you can start building your case. So use these tools and develop from them.
That's great. Well, thank you again. I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope we've provided useful information that will enhance the food safety and the knowledge base of our colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. And thank you to everybody who's joined us for the chat. Fantastic comments. We read them all as we're going along here, and we appreciate all that you do. And we appreciate the investment of time that you have being here and learning and growing and sharing this information within your organizations. So, of course, we'll have to bring our chat to a close here for this week, but we will be back here next Friday at the same time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern. We'll bring another extremely knowledgeable guest like Alan onto the chat, and we'll have a conversation with you. But in the meantime, enjoy your weekend. Have a great time. Take care of the food next week, and we'll see you back here next Friday. Thanks again, Alan. Appreciate it. And thank you, everybody.
Have a good weekend. Thank you.